Yo, Wednesday dudes. Below we're starting with Pierre Le Plessis, who works out of South Africa. And I've used his charts before. This one is called GDP Weighted Composite PMI, and he loves his PMIs. So call these amalgamated PMI indexes, and as you can see from below there, everybody is in expanding. The world is expanding. And then he's got over on the right, up this side, the trending. The higher it is, the more it is trending into the green. But if it's in red, it means it's pulling back. It might be expanding, but it's slowing its expansion. And you can see in top right there, France is in pole position, doing extremely well at the moment. I can't understand why, but there it is. And you can see various other countries, but everybody is in expanding. But most people are around the I don't know whether I can continue this or not sort of trending, and most are kind of pulling back on their expansions. And manufacturing PMIs slightly different, but a similar sort of chart. You can see Japan and Greece over there on the left, which they have, I think, generally always been, that when I've used these charts off Pierre Le Plessis. Australia is still there. Australia was certainly there last time. And we can see the expanding and trend up and trend down. And it's a mixed picture with global just trending back but expanding. And that's the picture all I wanted to say here, that generally the world is expanding slowly, but it is expanding mainly on the backs of the emerging markets, but it really doesn't know whether it's going to really push on or really pull back. Right, this is real GDP, a Doug Short chart going back to 1960, and he's a chartaholic, and you can see there's a trend line, and this is increasing year on year at 5%. At about in 1960 was the general thing, just under 5% increase, and now the trend line is down to nearer 2. But the general thing from this chart is to see that from 60 up to where we are now, 50 years, it's been getting increasing at a smaller and smaller rate as time goes on. America is not improving its GDP. New York Times, Washington, Speaker John Boehner said Monday Republicans would insist on trillions of dollars in federal spending cuts in exchange for their support of an increase in the federal debt limit. And down the bottom it says Boehner said those cuts should be in the trillions of dollars and not billions. You sure? And later we get Boehner said, I know it's meant that he says Boehner or something, isn't it? I don't know. Boehner said the reduction should be actual cuts and program reforms, not broad deficit or debt targets that punt the tough questions to the future. Just by admitting that that's what's been done in the past and saying we ain't gonna do that is very, very dangerous. And with the exception of tax hikes, which destroy jobs, everything is on the table. In other words, everything is open for cutting, even the military. But of course, they'd have to have a 5-year committee about whether they can cut it or not, and as they will have for everything. Big talk, and setting the bar extremely high. Somebody is going to get severely embarrassed by this. Gallup gives us taxes going back to 1957. And whether you think that your taxes in the United States, asking you guys whether you think your taxes are too high or about right, too high in dark green, about right in light green. And you can see that in the 60s there was about halfy, but generally it was low. 46% said it was too high. But then by the end of the 60s, in 1969, 69% thought they were too high. That came down. But have a look at the end. The Bush tax cuts, people understood them, they appreciated them, and thought coming down from 68% is now down to about a flat line at 50% think their taxes are too high, and low 40s say they are about right. In other words, you understand that your taxes have come down, but you still really don't want to pay any more taxes. I'm just pointing out here that Boner is right not to raise taxes, not because they will destroy jobs, but because they will destroy the electability of anybody who suggests them. So things will have to be cut by trillions. Good luck, boys. A lot of fuss going on about the total debt balance and its composition, and the rest of the link there, the Fed's money statistics, and everyone's well happy that mortgages have gone up, student loans have gone up, so the aggregate amount of debt taken out by Americans has gone up. The world is saved because the Americans must borrow money and spend. It would be better if they just spent, but they don't have the money to spend. They've got to borrow it. This is from the Globe and Mail, so looking at America from above, why America's zombie consumers won't be coming back to life soon. And this is Stephen Roach is being quoted here. Ex-Morgan Stanley superstar, now has gone out to Asia, that one. Before the crisis, American consumption was soaring not because of income growth or rising employment, but because we levered an asset bubble. We extracted money from overvalued property, and that's over. Consumers are stuck with a legacy of excessive debt, inadequate saving, and facing high unemployment, higher underemployment, weak incomes, and holding on to assets that are underwater. No wonder, he declares, that's Stephen Roach, that the American consumer is toast. Higher exports and increased capital spending could help the US economy weather the consumer's demoralizing decline. But I would say reduce your estimates of trend GDP growth in the United States over the next 3 to 5 years by at least 1 percentage point. That's a big deal, says Stephen Roach. Because we're really coming down from 2.5 to 1.5 there, something along those lines. But if you look in there, higher exports and increased capital spending could help. GDP is consumption, exports, the export-import imbalance or balance, increased capital spending, and that's all it is. So to get your high GDP in the United States, you need consumption or more exporting, which you're not going to get because of the price of oil, or increased capital spending. Now that's normally done by the private sector, but if it's done by the government, basically what I'm saying here is I think in a couple of years' time, when all this goes madly out of control, Boehner is going to be completely wrong. You're not going to be saving trillions of dollars. The government will be spending trillions of dollars more. The deficit will run out to $3-4 trillion. And maybe with the entire world's accord, saying, yes, good idea, go for it. Redo your entire infrastructure in the United States and put up windmills and do everything about green infrastructure. Just do it, we approve. Calculated risk Zillow on negative equity, which is now 28.4 of all single family homes with mortgages are underwater. 28.4, last quarter came in at 23.1, quite an increase of underwater homes, just emphasizing that the American consumer is underwater and it's coming up. Finish with a couple of things. Japan nuke plant to shut down over quake fears. Tokyo, the operator of a coastal nuclear plant, agreed Monday to the Japanese government's request to shutter 3 reactors there until it builds seawall and other tsunami protections. So it'll only take them a few months, probably. Maybe 6 months, I don't know. But it doesn't help Japan having to go and retro do these things and taking electricity offline. And finish with the Wall Street Journal, the Australian. Iraq is preparing to halve its official oil production target, forcing companies including BP and Shell to renegotiate their contracts. The country's oil ministry, with the backing from Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, will set a new target to produce between 6.5 and 7 million barrels a day by 2017, down from the original plans to pump 12 million barrels a day. That's not going to help either, is it, really? What did the IEA and the EIA and all those people have that down as? Probably the full 12 million in the future. They'll have to scratch those. Bye.